Students, welcome to the online class. We will have the explanation of lesson number 1, The Portrait of a Lady, written by Khushwant Singh. Here in this lesson, we have two main characters. One is the author's grandmother and the other is the narrator or the author himself. Now, if we see the theme of this lesson, The Portrait of a Lady is an account of intimate and affectionate relationship that existed between Khushwant Singh and his grandmother, spanning more than 20 years. Moreover, the author gives the pen portrait of his grandmother, describing the attributes and the qualities of his grandmother by which he was deeply impressed since his childhood. Now let us see the context of this story. The parents of Khushwant Singh, they moved to the city. They left Khushwant Singh with his grandmother. So the major part is played by Khushwant Singh's grandmother in nurturing, nourishing and bringing up Khushwant Singh. Hence, Khushwant Singh had deep and affectionate attachment with his grandmother. Now, Khushwant Singh starts this lesson with a statement. He says his grandmother is like everybody's grandmother. She is quite an old woman. Her face had lines and crisscross wrinkles. Her hairs were grey or white. This symbolized her extreme old age. But no one would believe that she had been once young and pretty. If someone would say to Khushwant Singh that your grandmother once had been a young and beautiful lady, had a husband, Khushwant Singh would not believe this. It is hard for Khushwant Singh to imagine his grandmother that she was a young and beautiful lady once upon a time. The thought itself was revolting. Khushwant Singh says he could not accept that once his grandmother had been young and pretty. That means for the narrator, she could never have been young and pretty, but she was always an old person. It's because he had seen him in that old state since 20 years. So it is hard for him to believe that she was once young and pretty. Now let us see the description of author's grandfather. Khushwant Singh gives the description of his grandfather from a photograph. He might have not seen his grandfather directly. There was a photo or picture of his grandfather that hung above the mantelpiece. Mantelpiece, it is a shelf that is above the fireplace. So that picture describes the appearance of grandfather. How did he look? He wore a big turban. His clothes were loose. He had a long white beard that covered the best part of his chest. If one looks at that photo, it seemed like the grandfather is at least 100-year old. So one can think that he may have lot of grandchildren, but no children or a wife. It is hard to believe that he once had children and wife. Now Khushwant Singh's grandmother was short, fat and slightly bent lady. It's due to her extreme old age or advanced old age. She could not walk straight. So what she did, she would place her one hand on her waist in order to balance her stoop. In order to balance herself, she would place her one hand on her waist. And this manner, she would hobble around the house. She would move around the house. The most important thing about her is that in her other hand, there was a rosary. Now, a rosary is a string of beads for keeping account in devotion. She was always telling the beads of her rosary. Her lips constantly moves in prayer. These two attributes shows us that Khushwant Singh's grandmother was a religious lady, a spiritually minded lady. Her beauty, her appearance is compared to a scenery, to a photo, to a picture of landscape that is full of peace and contentment. Let us see how their relationship was when they were in the village. Khushwant Singh had a very friendly, intimate and affectionate relationship with his grandmother. She would wake him up in the morning. She got him ready for the school. She would wash the wooden slate and plaster it with yellow chalk. She would take the earthen ink pot and red pen. Then she will bind them together in order to make a bundle. After that, she would give this bundle to Khushwant Singh. She would give him a stale, thick chapati with a little butter and sugar spread on it. And the remaining chapatis, she would keep it with her so that she could feed the stray dogs of the village. Then they go to the school. Now the most important thing, why she go to the school? Because she liked the school. Why she liked the school? Because it is attached to the village temple. The most important thing here is the teacher who teach in the school is the priest of that temple. This priest would teach the children alphabets, morning prayers, as well as religious and spiritual teachings. Therefore, the grandmother liked the village education. While Khushwant Singh was being taught in the school, his grandmother would sit in the temple. She would spend her time reading the holy scriptures and the verses written on the walls of the temple. But when the school is over, both of them, they would come back to their home. While returning the home, his grandmother would throw the stale chapatis to the village dogs. This was how their day is spent. This was their daily routine. Now there happened to be a change in their routine as well as their intimate relationship. It was the turning point of their life. Why? Because now they were transported to the city. They were shifted to the city. Now here in the city, Khushwant Singh began to go to an English medium school by motor bus. Therefore, the grandmother would not go with him. Moreover, she disliked the school education It's because in the city school there was no teaching about God or spiritual thing. She asked Khushwant Singh about the various subjects, what has been taught to him in the city school. He told her that he was taught about English and science, which she doesn't know. She hated the city school education. She disliked the city school education because in them there was no teaching about God, scriptures, and spiritual things. She felt sad and distressed because there was no teaching about God and scriptures in the new school. Therefore, she disliked the city school education. Moreover, in the city school, music was taught as an additional subject. When she discovered that Khushwant Singh is taught music in the new school, she was greatly frustrated. It's because she thought that music is indecent, not meant for gentle folks. It is associated with people like beggars and harlots. Therefore, she didn't like the idea of teaching music in the school or offering music as a part of the additional subject. She expressed her disapproval silently. Since then, she rarely talked to the narrator. Even though they live in the same building, in the same house, they shared their room together, but their relationship is changed. She talked less with the narrator. She rarely talked to him. She could not help him in the homework. She could not accompany him to the school. Their relationship is broken. Now what happens? Still, there was little conversation, little communication, and emotional connectivity between them. That means their relationship, even though it is affected, but still there is a little communication and conversation and emotional attachment between them. Years rolled by. Schooling of Khushwant Singh is now over. He started going to the college or university for higher studies. This time he was given a separate room. Thus, the common link of their friendship is broken. This made the grandmother to accept her seclusion with resignation. That means she did not protest against the shifting of Khushwant Singh into another room. She quietly accepted her loneliness. Then onwards, she started spinning the wheel throughout the day. But during the afternoon, she would take half an hour rest. Then she will feed the sparrows. She will go and sit in the veranda where hundreds of birds would come. She would take the bread and broke them into crumbs. She would throw them among the birds. Some birds would come and sit on her leg. Other birds would come and sit on her shoulders, while some would come even sat on her head. She will not frighten them or shoo them away. It was the happiest half an hour of the entire day. It was the happiest moment that she had in her life. Apart from spinning the wheel, apart from feeding the sparrows, she kept herself busy in chanting the prayers. All the times her lips constantly moved in prayer and telling the beads of the rosary. The narrator decided to go abroad for his higher studies. He would be far from his home, his family, his grandmother. And he thought that his grandmother would be upset and troubled to hear the news of his abroad going. He was very much concerned and worried about her health as well as her old age. It's because she could die any moment. However, the grandmother went to the railway station in order to send him abroad. She was there constantly praying and telling the beads of her rosary. She did not talk to him anything. She did not speak anything to the narrator, but she was busy in her prayer. She was busy in telling the beads of her rosary. Her behavior did not change. She did not show any emotion there that represents that she is or she was an emotionally strong woman. At the last, she kissed the forehead of the narrator. Khushwant Singh thought that this could be the last sign of physical contact between them. It's because he was not sure that when he will return back, he will be able to see his grandmother. He was not sure that she will be alive when he returned back to his home. So that's why he says that this could be the last sign of their physical contact. Now after that, the narrator went abroad for higher studies, half afraid that she might leave or not. She might survive or not. But 5 years passed very fastly. So it's the time for the narrator to come back home. And when he came back, he was glad to see his grandmother alive. She had come to the railway station in order to receive him. Even on that time, she did not speak to the narrator. She did not say anything to him. She was quite busy in chanting and reciting her prayer and telling the beads of her rosary. She did not show her emotion of happiness or joy to receive her grandson. Khushwant Singh returned home after 5 years. All the family members, they were happy. They expressed their happiness and joy. But what about the grandmother? She did not show any emotion. She did not show her happiness on the arrival of her grandson. But she was still busy in reciting the prayer, still busy in telling the beads of her rosary, still busy in spinning the wheel, still busy in feeding the birds during the afternoon. But in the evening, a drastic change came into her. And what was the change? She stopped praying. She stopped spinning the wheel. She stopped telling the beads of her rosary, and she went into the neighbors. She collected all the women of the neighbor, and she took a dilapidated and old drum. She began to start singing. She sang the homecoming of warriors. This was her way to express her joy, to express her happiness on the arrival of her grandson. She kept on thumping the drum for several hours. At the last, the family members, they had to go and pursue her to stop, or else she would be overstrained. This was how she celebrated the homecoming of her grandson. The most important part here is it was for the first time that she stopped reciting the prayer. It was for the first time she stopped chanting the prayers. It was for the first time she had forgotten to pray. And this was the change that inflicted in her during the evening. The next morning, she was taken ill. They called for the doctor for her health checkup. The doctor came and checked her, and she was taken by a mild fever. The doctor said that it's a mild fever and soon she will be all right. But the grandmother's prediction was something different. Even though the doctors assured her that she will be all right, or she will be soon recovered from her illness, but she predicted that her end was near. She is about to die. Therefore, she did not want to waste her time by talking to anyone from the family. She wanted to spend that time in her prayer, in chanting the prayer or telling the beads of her rosary. She was laid on her bed. She again started to recite prayers. All the family members, they were nearby her and they were looking at her as she was praying, as she was reciting the prayer. She was simultaneously rotating or telling the beads of her rosary. Immediately, her lips stopped moving. The rosary fell down from her lifeless hand. Soon, they discovered that she is no more. She is died. Now, as the custom, she was laid on the floor, and the other family members, they have gone in order to make the necessary arrangement for the cremation. And in the evening, in the veranda, in the courtyard, hundreds and thousands of birds came and perched on the floor. Looking at those birds, hundreds and thousands of birds sitting on the veranda, on the courtyard, the narrator's mother felt sorry for them, for she thought that these birds have come here for the breadcrumbs. So she took bread and broke it into crumbs and threw it to them. When the narrator's mother broke the bread into crumbs and threw it to these birds, they did not took any notice of these breadcrumbs. That means they did not eat these breadcrumbs. But when the body was taken outside of their house for the final cremation, these hundreds and thousands of birds flew away. And this was how the grandmother died. And this also shows her connection with those birds. And the next morning, the sweepers come and see that these breadcrumbs was still on the floor. They wiped it, they have taken them and throw them into the dustbin.